I felt it's such a transactional experience because it's not about him.
I know the toll it took on me not having a father in the house.
Children have a right to their mother and father, and they are harmed when they lose it.
We adults need to make sacrifices so that children don't have to.
Them Before Us, Why We Need a Global Children's Rights Movement by Katie Faust and Stacey Manning. Since the sexual revolution of the 1960s and the legislative changes that followed, especially no-fault divorce, the desires of adults have been the central concern in discussions regarding the modern family. If an innovation to law makes adults happier, so the logic goes, then their children must be happier too. For how can children be happy when their parents are not? Thus, over the past 50 years, we've seen the rise of no-fault divorce, single parenthood, same-sex parenting, IVF, and commercial surrogacy. Overall, these have proven statistically to be bad for children economically, psychologically, and socially. What we need, say Faust and Manning, is a revolution in how we think about the family that places the needs of children above the desires of parents, a revolution that places them before us. Here are Faust and Manning's most important ideas. First, it is a modern myth that the only thing kids need to grow up healthy and happy is to be safe and loved. Manning and Faust show that children have unique rights based on their particular situation and vulnerabilities. The key right for children is, when possible, to be raised by their biological mother and father in a loving but stable household. Why do children have this right? Simply because we know that such an environment is most likely to bring about their long-term flourishing. Or, put negatively, the deprivation of this is most likely to lead to their long-term detriment. As a Princeton University and Brookings Institute report said, most scholars now agree that children raised by two biological parents in a stable marriage do better than children in other family forms across a wide range of outcomes. The upshot is that the rights of children should inform and shape legislation regarding the family. Unfortunately, as Faust and Manning document, in today's individualistic West, this is not the case. Second, we need to move away from talk of parenting and back towards talk of fathering and mothering, because the sex of parents matters in raising children. That mothers and fathers parent differently is an inconvenient truth in our culture that draws no qualitative distinctions between married parents, de facto parents, same-sex parents, or single parents. But gendered parenting styles have their basis in biology. A 2019 study employed MRI scans to study babies in utero and found structural differences between male and female brains. The anterior cortex, the region responsible for processing emotions, including worry, is larger in women than it is in men. This means that women have a greater capacity for worrying than men, which helps to explain why women are twice as likely to be diagnosed with anxiety disorders, but also the nurturing, risk-averse parenting style of mothers. Testosterone in men fuels competitiveness and risk-taking. Nurturing, risk-taking, competitiveness are essential aspects of bringing up a child in safety, but not so safe that the child will not be able to engage successfully in an often scary and hostile world. But the importance of both a mother and a father is not just about parenting styles. It's about children needing emotional connection with both male and female parents. Faust and Manning offer quotes from interviews with adults who recollect the loss they felt as children being deprived of the presence of either a mother or a father. The impact of fatherlessness on young men is especially well documented now.
I know the toll it took on me not having a father in the house. When you don't have a male figure in the home that can guide you and lead you and set a good example for you. We know that more than half of all black children live in single-parent households. Half, a number that's doubled since we were children. We know the statistics that children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime.
The evidence tells us that so-called toxic masculinity is not a result of dad's influence. It's a result of dad's absence. Third, the bond between parents and children is strongest when it's complemented by biology. One of the most unsafe situations children can find themselves in is when they are in a home that includes the unrelated male partner of their mother, especially when they are left alone with that unrelated male partner. One Canadian study that looked at fatal beatings between 1974 and 1990 discovered that, appallingly, children were 120 times more likely to be beaten to death by their stepfather or mother's live-in boyfriend than they were at the hands of their biological father. Another study published in 2005 showed that young children who live in a household with an unrelated adult are at a nearly 50-fold risk of suffering a fatal inflicted injury. A 2010 study showed that children living with their mother's boyfriend are about 11 times more likely to be sexually, physically, or emotionally abused than children living with their married biological parents. The tragic and inconvenient truths continue when we look at studies of emotional connection between non-biological parents and children. They are weaker than biological kin. A 2011 Pew Research Center study showed that through no fault of their own, step-parents are not as emotionally tied to their partner's children than they are to their own offspring. Sadly, studies also indicate that step-parents are less likely to invest money and time into the health and general well-being of their dependent stepchildren. Fourth, the phrase modern family usually refers to a family model in which the rights and needs of children have been sacrificed for the happiness of the adults. Because many of these ideas go unchallenged, an industry often referred to as big fertility has increasingly stepped in to facilitate procreation with the rise of openly same-sex couples, single by-choice mothers, and the aging demographic of parenthood. It includes IVF and surrogacy, where the child will probably never know one of his or her parents. Commercial surrogacy is another growing industry, not just in the developing world, but also in some American states. Among other problems, surrogate pregnancies are more likely to end in prenatal death, and also in increased health risks for the children. Much of this is owing to genetic dissimilarity between the carrying mother and the embryo, which is frequently treated by the carrier's body as an alien entity. Thus, surrogate children are more likely to be prematurely born, which comes with its own set of health risks, as well as lighter in weight and suffer higher levels of distress as children. There's also the problem of potential parents treating commercial surrogacy as a transaction so much that if they're unhappy with the product, they simply don't take it. Down syndrome or otherwise disabled children can simply be abandoned to their usually poor surrogate mothers by the commissioning parents. All of this is documented in Faust and Manning's book. Then before us is an important evidence-based critique of our culture's preoccupation with adult happiness, even at the cost of children's welfare.
I felt really guilty that this woman just had my baby and I take the baby and then I go to another room and you're sort of separated. I felt it's such a transactional experience because it's not about him.
Then before us, it's also a call to reinvigorate the health of marriage and the practice of adoption as opposed to IVF and surrogacy. If there's a cultural revolution that is worth getting behind today, this is it. I'm Stephen Shavura for John Anderson Media.